The blood on her hands had dried 3 days ago, but Meredith Jenkins could still feel it burning into her skin like a brand she would carry forever. She stumbled down the main street of Georgetown, Colorado, her boots catching on the wooden planks, as exhaustion pulled at every muscle in her body. The September sun of 1882 beat down mercilessly, and she could not remember the last time she had slept, truly slept, without jerking awake to the sound of gunfire that existed only in her memory. The mountain town bustled around her with miners and merchants going about their business, but Meredith saw none of it. Her vision had narrowed to a tunnel, and at the end of that tunnel was simply the need to keep moving, keep breathing, keep her eyes open because closing them meant seeing her father's face as he fell, meant hearing her mother's scream cut short by another blast of buckshot. The outlaws had left her alive, she supposed, because they thought a 19-year-old girl posed no threat. They had been wrong about that, but not before they had taken everything that mattered. She had ridden hard from the burned remains of her family's ranch outside of Denver, putting distance between herself and the men who might come looking for witnesses. 3 days in the saddle with barely a moment's rest, surviving on jerky and creek water, jumping at every shadow and sound. Her body screamed for sleep, but her mind would not allow it. Every time her eyes had drifted closed during the journey, she had jolted awake with her heart hammering against her ribs, certain she heard hoofbeats pursuing her. Meredith's foot caught on an uneven board, and she went down hard, her palms scraping against the rough wood. She tried to push herself up, but her arms shook with the effort. The world tilted dangerously. "Miss, you all right there?" A voice cut through the fog in her mind, deep and concerned. She looked up to find a man crouched beside her, his hand extended but not touching, as if he understood that contact might startle her. He wore the dusty clothes of a working cowboy, his dark hat shading a face that looked to be in his mid-20s, with strong features weathered by sun and wind. His eyes, she noticed even through her exhaustion, were a striking hazel, and they held genuine worry. "I am fine," Meredith said, but her voice came out as barely a whisper. She tried again to stand and failed. "With respect, miss, you do not look fine." He kept his voice gentle, non-threatening. "When did you last eat, or sleep?" "I do not need sleep." The words tumbled out with more force than she intended. "I need to keep moving." The cowboy studied her for a long moment, taking in her hollow eyes, her trembling hands, the way she swayed even while sitting. "My name is Quentin Foster. I work at the Silver Creek Ranch just outside town. Why do not you let me help you to the boarding house? Mrs. Patterson runs a clean establishment. I have no money for boarding houses." The admission cost her what little pride she had left. "Then let me buy you a meal at least. You look like you were about to fall over, and I cannot in good conscience leave a lady in distress." He stood and offered his hand again. No strings attached, just a hot meal, and maybe a place to sit that is not in the middle of the street. Meredith wanted to refuse, wanted to tell him she needed no help from strangers, but her body betrayed her. Her stomach cramped with hunger, and the thought of actual food made her mouth water. She took his hand, surprised by the callous strength of it as he pulled her easily to her feet. She wobbled, and his other hand came to her elbow, steadying her. "Easy now," Quentin said, "one step at a time." He guided her down the street to a small restaurant that advertised home cooking. The smell of frying bacon and fresh bread nearly made her knees buckle. Inside, he settled her into a chair at a corner table, positioning himself so he sat with his back to the wall and could watch the door. She noticed the way his eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, the awareness of a man who had learned to be cautious. When the waitress came, Quentin ordered enough food for 3 people: steak, eggs, potatoes, biscuits, coffee. Meredith wanted to tell him it was too much, that she could not possibly repay him, but the words died in her throat when the coffee arrived. She wrapped her hands around the cup, letting the warmth seep into her cold fingers, and took a sip. It was strong and bitter and exactly what she needed. "You want to tell me what has you running scared?" Quentin asked, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "What makes you think I'm running?" "Because I recognize the look. I have worn it myself." He leaned back in his chair, appearing relaxed, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand stayed near his hip where a gun would hang. "You have that 1,000-yard stare that comes from seeing things you cannot unsee, and you keep checking the door like you expect the devil himself to walk through it." The food arrived before she could respond, and for several minutes she ate with single-minded focus, barely tasting the food but feeling strength return to her limbs with each bite. Quentin ate more slowly, watching her with concern. When she had taken the edge off her hunger, Meredith set down her fork and met his eyes. Something in his steady gaze made her want to trust him, though every instinct screamed against trusting anyone. Raiders attacked my family's ranch 4 days ago. My parents did not survive. I did, though I'm not certain whether that makes me lucky or cursed. His jaw tightened, and something dark flickered in his eyes. Did you recognize any of them? 3 of them. The Wade brothers and a man named Cutter. They ride with a larger gang, but those 3 led the raid. She said the names with careful precision, committing them to memory one more time. They took everything. Burned the house, ran off the livestock, left me with nothing but my horse and the clothes on my back. The Wade gang has been terrorizing this territory for near a year now, Quentin said quietly. Sheriff in Denver has a bounty on them, but they are slippery as snakes. I am sorry for your loss. Miss Jenkins, Meredith Jenkins. Miss Jenkins. He nodded respectfully. Where are you headed? I do not know. Away, somewhere they would not think to look for me. She picked up her coffee cup again, needing something to do with her hands. I thought if I kept writing, kept moving, I might outrun the memories. But they follow me everywhere, especially when I close my eyes. How long since you slept? I told you, I do not need sleep. Everyone needs sleep, Miss Jenkins. You cannot run on fumes forever. Your body will give out. Better that than closing my eyes and seeing them die again. Her voice broke on the last word, and she hated herself for the weakness. She had promised herself she would not cry, would not break down, would not give those animals the satisfaction of destroying her completely. Quentin was quiet for a moment, turning his coffee cup in his hands. When he spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. I know what it is to lose family violently. I know what it is to be afraid to sleep because of what waits behind your eyelids. But I also know that you cannot heal if you do not rest, and I am guessing you have been pushing yourself to the point of collapse. I cannot afford to be weak. Resting is not weakness, it is survival. He leaned forward, his hazel eyes intense. Look, I do not know you, and you do not know me. But I have a proposition. The Silver Creek Ranch is always looking for help, especially heading into fall when we need to prepare for winter. Mrs. Morrison, the owner, she is a good woman, fair. She has a bunkhouse for the hands, but she also has a small cottage that sits empty since her daughter married and moved to town. I could talk to her, see if she would be willing to trade room and board for work. You would have a safe place to stay, honest work, and time to figure out your next move. Meredith shook her head. I cannot involve strangers in my problems. If those men come looking for me, then they will have to deal with 20 ranch hands who do not take kindly to outlaws. Quentin's expression was serious. You need a place to rest, Miss Jenkins. You need to sleep, really sleep, somewhere you feel safe. Otherwise, you are going to fall off your horse or walk into danger because you are too exhausted to see it coming. She wanted to argue, wanted to insist that she could handle herself, but the truth was that she barely had the energy to sit upright. The hot meal had helped, but it had also made her realize just how depleted she was. Her eyes burned with the need for sleep, and her thoughts moved through syrup. Why would you help me? She asked. You do not know me. I could be anyone. Because someone helped me once when I needed it most, and I swore I would pay that kindness forward. Quentin signaled the waitress for more coffee. Because I can see you are at the end of your rope, and I cannot walk away from that. And because... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Because I know what the Wade gang does to the families they target, and anyone who survived them deserves a chance to rebuild. There was a story there, Meredith could tell, something dark in his past that connected to hers. But she was too tired to press, and he did not seem inclined to elaborate. Instead, she weighed her options. She could refuse his help and continue running on empty until she collapsed somewhere far less safe than a Colorado restaurant. She could try to find work in Georgetown, but she had no references, no connections, and no one to vouch for her. Or she could accept the charity of this stranger who seemed genuinely concerned for her welfare. If your Mrs. Morrison agrees, Meredith said finally, I will work hard. I grew up on a ranch. I know horses, cattle, mending fences, all of it. I can earn my keep. Relief crossed Quentin's face. Good, that is good. Finish your meal, and then we will ride out to Silver Creek. It is only about an hour from here. I need to get my horse. I left her at the stable at the edge of town. We will get her. What is her name? Willow. She is a bay mare, 8 years old. She carried me all the way from Denver without complaint. They finished their meal in companionable silence. Quentin paid the bill despite Meredith's weak protests, and then they walked to the stable where she had left Willow. The mare nickered softly when she saw Meredith, and the familiar sound brought tears to her eyes. Willow was the last living connection to her old life, the only thing she had managed to save. Quentin saddled his own horse, a sturdy buckskin gelding named Buck, and then they rode out of Georgetown toward the mountains. The September afternoon was crisp and clear, with aspens beginning to turn gold on the slopes above them. Under other circumstances, Meredith might have appreciated the beauty. As it was, she focused all her energy on staying in the saddle. She must have dozed off despite herself, because she jerked awake to find Quentin riding close beside her, his hand outstretched as if ready to catch her if she fell. "Easy," he said. "We are almost there." Ahead, she could see a sprawling ranch spread out across a valley, with a large main house, several outbuildings, and corrals full of horses. Smoke rose from the chimney of the main house, and she could see figures moving about their work. It looked prosperous and well-maintained, the kind of place her family's ranch had been before the Wade gang destroyed it. Quentin led her to the main house and dismounted, tying Buck to the hitching post. "Wait here a moment. Let me talk to Mrs. Morrison first." He disappeared inside, and Meredith sat on Willow, swaying slightly in the saddle. She could hear low voices from inside the house, but could not make out words. After a few minutes, Quentin emerged with a woman who looked to be in her 50s, her gray-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun, her dress covered by an apron. "Miss Jenkins," the woman said, her voice kind but assessing, "Quentin tells me you have had some hard times. I am Agnes Morrison. This is my ranch, such as it is. Madam," Meredith tried to sit straighter, "I do not expect charity. Quentin said you might have work. I can handle horses, cattle, whatever needs doing. I will earn my keep." Agnes studied her with sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. "When did you last sleep, child?" "I am not certain. A few days." "More than a few, I would wager." Agnes looked at Quentin. "Take her to the cottage. Get her settled. We will talk about work when she is rested and can string two thoughts together without swaying in the saddle." "Thank you, madam," Meredith said, relief washing through her so powerfully it made her dizzy. "Thank me by not falling off that horse before Quentin gets you to the cottage." Agnes's stern expression softened slightly. "We all need help sometimes, Miss Jenkins. No shame in accepting it." Quentin mounted Buck again and led Meredith around the main house to a small cottage nestled against a stand of pines. It was modest but well built, with a covered porch and curtains in the windows. He dismounted and came to help her down from Willow, and she was grateful for his support because her legs nearly buckled when her feet hit the ground. "Let me check inside first," Quentin said, and she realized he was making sure it was safe, that no one was hiding there. The thought had not even occurred to her, which proved just how exhausted she was. Her survival instincts had dulled to nothing. He emerged a moment later. "All clear. There is a bed with clean linens, a stove, some basic supplies. I will bring your saddlebags in and then take care of Willow. You need to sleep." "I cannot." The protest was automatic, even as her body screamed for rest. "You must." Quentin's voice was gentle but firm. He retrieved her saddlebags from Willow and carried them inside, setting them on a chair. The cottage was indeed small but comfortable, with a single room that held a bed, a table with 2 chairs, and a cast-iron stove. A door on the far wall presumably led to a washroom. Meredith stood in the center of the room, trembling with exhaustion and fear. "What if they find me? What if I sleep and wake up to find?" "You will not." Quentin moved to the window, checking the sight lines. "I will be right outside. No one comes or goes from this cottage without passing me first. You have my word. You cannot stand guard all night. You must have your own work to do." "I will manage." He moved to the door. "Try to rest, Miss Jenkins. You are safe here." But as he turned to leave, Meredith heard herself say, "Meredith, you can call me Meredith." He paused in the doorway and looked back at her, a small smile touching his lips. "Quentin, and I meant what I said. You are safe now." After he left, Meredith stood staring at the bed. It looked impossibly inviting with its quilted coverlet and plump pillows, but terror gripped her at the thought of closing her eyes. She compromised by sitting on the edge of the bed to remove her boots. Just for a moment, she told herself. She would just rest her eyes for a moment. She did not remember lying down, did not remember pulling the blanket over herself. But when she next opened her eyes, the light had changed, and she was curled on her side with the pillow clutched to her chest. Panic surged through her. How long had she been asleep? Who had been watching while she was vulnerable? She bolted upright and immediately saw Quentin through the window. He sat on the porch in a chair he must have brought from somewhere, his hat tipped low, but his posture alert. As if sensing her gaze, he turned and met her eyes through the glass. He nodded slightly, a gesture that said all was well, and something in Meredith's chest unclenched. She glanced at the small clock on the table and saw that only an hour had passed. The relief that flooded through her was immense. She had slept, truly slept, without nightmares, without waking in terror. Only an hour, but it was more than she had managed in days. Meredith lay back down, her body still heavy with exhaustion, and let her eyes drift closed again. Through the window, she could see Quentin's silhouette, a solid presence between her and the world. She did not know why he had decided to help her, what motivated his kindness, but in that moment, she was grateful for it. When she woke again, the sun had moved significantly across the sky. She sat up more slowly this time, her body protesting the movement. Every muscle ached from days in the saddle and the tension she had carried, but her mind felt clearer, the fog of exhaustion lifting slightly. Quentin still sat on the porch. She could see him whittling something, his hands moving with practiced ease. Had he truly sat there the entire time? The thought filled her with an emotion she could not quite name. She rose and splashed water from the basin on her face, then finger-combed her tangled hair. She looked a fright, but there was little she could do about it now. She opened the door and stepped onto the porch. Quentin looked up from his whittling, his hazel eyes assessing. "You look better. Got about 3 hours of real sleep. You sat here the whole time? I told you I would." He brushed wood shavings off his lap. "How do you feel?" "Like I was trampled by a stampede, but better than I did." She sat on the porch step, keeping a respectful distance between them. "Thank you for standing watch. I do not think I could have slept otherwise." "No need for thanks. You needed rest." He went back to his whittling, and she could see he was shaping a small bird from a piece of pine. "Mrs. Morrison wants to meet with you before supper, talk about what kind of work you might do around here. But there is no pressure, if you need more time." "No, I want to work. I need to feel useful, to do something other than run." Meredith watched his hands shape the wood, the careful precision of each cut. "What are you making?" "A hawk. I whittle when I need to keep my hands busy." He held it up for her inspection. "Helps me think." "It is beautiful. You have a real talent." He shrugged, but she thought she saw pleasure in his eyes at the compliment. "Just something I picked up over the years. When you spend a lot of time alone, you find ways to occupy yourself." "Have you worked here long?" 3 years. Mrs. Morrison took me on when I needed a fresh start, much like she is doing for you." He set the half-finished hawk aside. "I came here from Texas with nothing but my horse and the clothes on my back, running from my own demons. She gave me a chance, treated me fair. I have been here ever since." "What were you running from?" The question slipped out before Meredith could stop it. "I am sorry, that is too personal." "No, it is all right. Fair question, given that I am asking you to trust me." Quentin leaned back in his chair, his gaze distant. "My family had a ranch outside of San Antonio. I was 22, working the place with my father and brother. The Wade gang hit us one night. Killed my father, wounded my brother bad enough he could not work anymore. They took everything, just like they did to you." Meredith's breath caught. The same gang? The very same. The Wade brothers have been cutting a swath through the territories for years, hitting isolated ranches, taking what they want, leaving destruction behind. His jaw tightened. "I spent a year tracking them, trying to get justice. Nearly got myself killed in the process. Then I realized I was destroying myself, pursuing them, and I came up here to start over." "Do you regret it, not continuing to hunt them?" "Some days, but mostly I think I made the right choice. Revenge would not have brought my father back or healed my brother. It would just have made me into something I did not want to be." He looked at her directly. "You cannot build a life on vengeance, Meredith. It will eat you alive." "I am not looking for vengeance," she said, though she was not entirely sure that was true. "I just want to feel safe again. I want to sleep without seeing their faces. I want to stop jumping at every sound. That takes time, and rest, and feeling secure enough to let your guard down." He stood and stretched, his joints popping. "Come on, let me introduce you properly to Mrs. Morrison, and we will get you settled in for real." They walked together to the main house, where Agnes Morrison waited in a comfortable parlor filled with well-loved furniture and family photographs. She gestured for Meredith to sit and poured her a cup of tea without asking if she wanted any. "You look more human now," Agnes said bluntly. "Quentin told me your story, about the Wade gang. I am truly sorry for your lost child." "Thank you, madam. Now, let us talk practically. You say you can work a ranch. I need someone to help with the horses, particularly the ones we are training for sale. I also need help in the house from time to time, cooking and cleaning for the hands. Can you do that?" "Yes, madam. My mother taught me to cook and keep house, and my father taught me horses. I can do both." "Good. You will work 6 days a week. Sundays are for rest, and I enforce that strictly. You will take your meals with the hands or up at the house. Your choice. The cottage is yours for as long as you need it. I will pay you a small wage, $20 a month, which you can save toward your future." $20 a month was more than fair for room and board included. Meredith felt tears prick her eyes. "That is very generous, Mrs. Morrison. It is what I pay all my workers. You will earn it, believe me. Fall and winter are hard seasons on a ranch." Agnes sipped her tea, studying Meredith over the rim of her cup. "But there is one more thing. Quentin mentioned you are having trouble sleeping, that you are afraid to let your guard down. That will not do. You cannot work safely if you are exhausted and jumping at shadows." "I will manage, madam. I do not want to be a burden." "You will not be a burden, but you will accept help when it is offered. Quentin has volunteered to stand watch at night until you feel secure enough to sleep on your own. I have agreed to let him do so, provided he still completes his own work during the day." Meredith's cheeks flushed. "That is too much to ask of him. He needs his own rest." "I have told Mrs. Morrison I can manage," Quentin said from where he leaned against the doorframe. "I am a light sleeper anyway, always have been, and you need to heal, Meredith. You cannot do that if you are fighting sleep every night." "It might take weeks." The protest felt weak even to her own ears. "Then it takes weeks. I am not going anywhere." Agnes set down her teacup with a decisive click. "Then it is settled. You start work tomorrow, Miss Jenkins. For tonight, Quentin will continue standing watch, and you will get a proper night's sleep. We will all feel better for it." There seemed no point in arguing with the woman. Meredith nodded her acceptance, though guilt and gratitude warred in her chest. She was not accustomed to accepting charity, to relying on others for her safety. But she also could not deny that she felt better having slept those few hours with Quentin watching over her than she had in days of restless half-consciousness in the saddle. They ate supper with the ranch hands, a rowdy group of men who welcomed Meredith with rough kindness once they learned she was there to work. They asked no prying questions about her past, just accepted her presence and made room at the table. The food was simple but plentiful. Beef stew and cornbread and apple pie that reminded her painfully of her mother's cooking. After supper, as darkness fell over the valley, Quentin walked her back to the cottage. The September night was cool, with stars beginning to emerge in the deepening blue of the sky. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. "You do not have to do this," Meredith said as they reached the porch. "Stand watch all night. It is too much." "I want to." Quentin settled into his chair, the one he had been occupying all afternoon. "Besides, I find I rest easier knowing you are resting. You looked like death walking when I found you in town." "I probably did." She hesitated on the threshold. "Will you tell me if you see anything, hear anything?" "You will be the first to know. But Meredith, this ranch is well protected. Mrs. Morrison has guards patrolling the property lines at night. The hands are all experienced men who can handle trouble. And the Wade gang tends to hit isolated homesteads, not established ranches with 20 armed workers. You are as safe here as anywhere in the territory." His words made sense, but fear was not always logical. "I know, but knowing and feeling are two different things." "They are. That is why I will be right here, so you can feel it as well as know it." He tipped his hat back, and in the lamplight spilling from the cottage window, she could see the sincerity in his face. "Get some sleep, Meredith. Real sleep. Let yourself heal." She went inside and prepared for bed, washing as best she could with the basin and pitcher, braiding her hair to keep it from tangling further. She changed into the spare chemise from her saddlebags, grateful she had thought to grab a few essentials when she fled her family's ranch. Everything else she owned had burned with the house. When she finally lay down, she left the curtain open just enough to see Quentin on the porch. His presence soothed something raw in her chest. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in nearly a week, she felt the darkness embrace her without terror. She dreamed of her parents, but for once they were not dying. Instead, they were alive and smiling, standing in front of their home as it had been before the fire. Her father waved to her, and her mother called her name with love. When she woke just after dawn, tears wet her cheeks, but they were tears of grief rather than fear, and somehow that felt like progress. Quentin still sat on the porch, though he had changed position. He was whittling again, his hands moving in the soft morning light. When she emerged, he looked up and smiled. It transformed his face, making him look younger, less burdened. "Good morning. You slept through the whole night." "I did." The realization filled her with relief and a strange lightness. "I dreamed of my parents." "Good dreams are bad." "Sad but good. They were alive in the dream, whole." She sat on the step again. "Did you sleep at all?" "Enough. I dozed off and on. Like I said, I am a light sleeper." He closed his knife and pocketed the half-finished carving. "Mrs. Morrison will have breakfast ready soon. Then I will show you around the ranch, introduce you to the horses you will be working with." The morning was crisp and beautiful, with frost glittering on the grass. Meredith felt more alert than she had in days, though exhaustion still clung to her bones. She knew it would take more than one good night's sleep to recover from the ordeal she had endured, but it was a start. Breakfast was hearty, eggs and bacon and flapjacks with syrup. The hands ate with the single-minded focus of men who would spend the day doing hard physical labor. Meredith ate her fill, feeling her strength returning bite by bite. Afterward, Quentin took her to the stables and corrals. The Silver Creek Ranch bred and trained horses for sale throughout Colorado and beyond, and they had nearly 50 animals in various stages of training. Quentin introduced her to each horse, explaining their temperaments and training levels, his knowledge evident in every word. "This is Dancer," he said, stopping at a stall containing a gray gelding with intelligent eyes. "He is 3 years old, green broke but promising. Mrs. Morrison wants him fully trained for riding by Christmas. Think you can handle that?" Meredith entered the stall and let Dancer sniff her hand. The horse nuzzled her palm, searching for treats. "He has a good eye, curious but not spooky. Yes, I can work with him." "Good. He is yours then." Quentin moved to the next stall. "And this is Rosie, a mare we are training for saddle work. She is further along but has a stubborn streak. Been giving Jacob fits." They spent the morning going through the horses, and Meredith felt herself relaxing into familiar work. This she understood, this language of horses and leather and patient training. By noon, she had a list of 5 horses that would be her primary responsibility, and she was eager to begin. Quentin left her to get acquainted with her charges while he went to handle his own duties. She spent the afternoon working with Dancer, getting a sense of his personality and responses. He was indeed promising, with a smooth gait and willingness to learn. Working with him felt like coming home to herself. The days fell into a rhythm after that. Meredith worked with the horses during the day, taking satisfaction in their progress. She helped cook meals for the hands, her mother's recipes returning to her fingers as she kneaded bread and stirred stew. And every night, without fail, Quentin took up his post on her porch. At first she protested regularly, feeling guilty about his sacrifice, but he waved away her concerns, insisting he was fine, that he liked the quiet time to whittle and think. Gradually, she came to accept his presence as a gift she could not repay, but could be grateful for. And slowly, night by night, she slept more soundly. The nightmares came less frequently. She still woke sometimes in the dark hours, heart racing, certain she heard gunfire. But then she would see Quentin's silhouette on the porch, and her pulse would slow, and she would slip back into sleep. They talked during those late evenings when she could not quite settle, when rest eluded her despite her exhaustion. She would sit on the porch step, wrapped in a blanket, and they would speak quietly of small things. The weather, the horses, stories from their childhoods. The good memories before loss had marked them both. My father used to take me fishing in the creek behind our ranch, Meredith said one October evening, nearly a month after her arrival. The aspens were golden fire on the mountainsides, and the air carried the sharp promise of winter. Every Sunday after church, just the two of us. He said it was important to have quiet time to think. Sounds like a wise man. Quentin had finished the hawk and moved on to carving a bear, his knife moving in sure, small strokes. My father was not much for quiet, but he loved to sing, had a terrible voice, but it never stopped him. He would sing while he worked, old songs from his own childhood in Ireland. Do you remember any of them? A few, but I cannot carry a tune any better than he could. He smiled, the expression soft with memory. My brother used to joke that we were torturing the cattle. Where is your brother now? She had wanted to ask for weeks, but had not been sure if it was too painful a subject. Last I heard, he was living with our aunt in Dallas. The wounds from the raid left him with a limp, and pain that never quite goes away. He could not work the ranch anymore, so he sold out and moved to the city. We write occasionally, but it is hard. Too many bad memories between us. I am sorry. That must be lonely. It is. But I think some distances are necessary for healing. Maybe someday we will find our way back to each other. He tested the edge of his knife against his thumb. What about you? Any other family out there? An aunt in St. Louis, my mother's sister. We were never close. She did not approve of my mother marrying a rancher, thought she was throwing her life away, moving west. Meredith pulled the blanket tighter. I should probably write to her, let her know what happened, but I do not know what I would say. The truth is usually a good place to start. The truth is that I am afraid if I write to her, she will insist I come live with her in St. Louis, and I do not want to leave. The admission surprised her, but it was true. Despite the circumstances that had brought her to Silver Creek Ranch, she was beginning to feel at home here. Quentin looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his eyes. I am glad you want to stay. You fit here. The words warmed her in a way that had nothing to do with the blanket. Over the past month, her feelings toward Quentin had shifted from simple gratitude to something deeper and more complex. She found herself looking for him during the day, feeling lighter when she caught sight of him working with the other hands. She noticed things about him, the way he moved with unconscious grace, the kindness he showed to animals and people alike, the quiet strength that made her feel safe. It was dangerous, she knew, to develop feelings for him. She had nothing to offer, no prospects, no family. She was damaged goods, a woman haunted by violence and loss. But her heart paid no attention to these logical concerns. It simply opened toward him like a flower turning toward the sun. As autumn deepened toward winter, the ranch prepared for the harsh season ahead. Cattle were brought down from the high pastures. Hay was stacked in the barns. Storm shutters were repaired and firewood cut and split. Meredith worked alongside the other hands, grateful for labor that tired her body and gave her mind little time to wander dark paths. Dancer progressed beautifully under her training, responding to her cues with increasing precision. Mrs. Morrison came to watch one afternoon as Meredith put him through his paces, and the older woman nodded with satisfaction. You have a gift with horses, Meredith. He is coming along splendidly. Thank you, madam. He is a pleasure to work with. I have had 3 inquiries about purchasing him, but I told them he would not be ready until after the new year. Agnes leaned against the corral fence. How are you sleeping these days? Better, much better. It was true. Though Quentin still kept his nightly vigil, she now slept 6 or 7 hours straight, waking rested rather than exhausted. The nightmares had faded to occasional unpleasant dreams rather than nightly terrors. Good. You look healthier. Put some weight back on those bones. Agnes hesitated, then said carefully, Quentin looks better too. I have not seen him this content in the 3 years he has been here. Meredith felt her cheeks heat. I hope I have not been a burden on him. Burden? Child, you have been the opposite. That young man needed something to care about beyond his work and his whittling. He has been drifting, I think, since he came here. Healing, but not quite living. You have given him purpose. He has given me my life back. I could not have survived without his help. Then perhaps you have given each other exactly what you needed. Agnes patted her arm. I am a meddling old woman, but I see how you look at each other when you think no one is watching. Life is short, Meredith, and uncertain. Do not waste time on fear when you could be living. The words stayed with Meredith through the rest of the day and into the evening. She found herself thinking about Quentin differently, wondering if what she saw in his eyes was merely kindness or something deeper, wondering if she dared hope for more than safety and a place to rest. That night, when she emerged from the cottage after supper, she found Quentin had brought a second chair to the porch. He gestured to it. "Thought you might like to sit properly instead of on the step. Getting too cold for that." She settled into the chair, grateful for the consideration. He had also brought a thick blanket, which he offered to her. The evening was indeed cold, with the first real bite of winter in the air. "Snow is coming," Quentin said, studying the sky. "Tomorrow or the next day. I can feel it. I love the first snow, the way it makes everything clean and quiet. Me too, though I do not love the part where we have to shovel paths to all the outbuildings." He smiled at her, and in the lamplight his face was handsome and open. "How are the horses coming?" "Well, Dancer is nearly ready for a buyer. Rosie is still being stubborn, but I think I understand her now. She just needs to know she is in charge before she will listen." Meredith watched a star fall across the northern sky. "Mrs. Morrison said she has had inquiries about Dancer. He will fetch a good price. You have done excellent work with him." Quentin paused in his whittling. "Does it make you sad, training them just to send them away?" "A little, but that is the nature of it. You give them what they need to succeed, and then you let them go to their new lives. There is satisfaction in that." She looked at him curiously. "Do you ever think about leaving? Going somewhere else? Starting fresh again?" "I used to. When I first came here, I thought it was temporary, that I would move on as soon as I had enough money saved. But somewhere along the way, Silver Creek became home." He resumed carving, his hands sure in the darkness. "And now I have reasons to stay that I did not have before." The way he said it, the glance he gave her, made Meredith's heart skip. "What reasons?" "Good people, honest work, a place that feels right." Another pause, and then quietly, "You." The single word hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning. Meredith's breath caught. "Quentin, I know I have no right to say it. I know you came here running from trauma, looking for safety, not romance. But I cannot keep pretending I do not care about you as more than just someone I am helping." He set down his carving and turned to face her fully. "These past 2 months, watching over you, getting to know you, seeing your strength and resilience, Meredith, you are the most remarkable woman I have ever met." "I am broken," she whispered, "damaged. You are healing. There is a difference." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "We are all broken in some way, Meredith. The question is whether we can heal together or if we have to do it alone. I think we could do it better together." Tears pricked her eyes, but they were not tears of sorrow. "I have been afraid to hope for this, afraid to think about what I feel for you, because it seems so impossible." "What do you feel?" His voice was gentle, giving her space to answer or not. "Safe, happy, like maybe I could have a future again instead of just surviving day to day." She met his eyes. "I feel like you see me, all of me, even the scared and hurt parts, and you do not turn away." "I never will." He reached across the space between their chairs and offered his hand, palm up, letting her choose. "I cannot promise you a life without trouble, Meredith. This is still the wild territories, and there are dangers. But I can promise you that whatever comes, we will face it together. I will guard your sleep and your safety like the treasure you are." She placed her hand in his, feeling the calloused warmth of his palm against hers, and something inside her that had been clenched tight since the night of the raid finally loosened. "I think I have been falling in love with you, Quentin Foster. I was just too scared to admit it." His smile was like sunrise, brilliant and warm. "I know I have been falling in love with you, Meredith Jenkins. From the moment I saw you fall in the street and found that fierce will to survive in your eyes." They sat holding hands under the stars, and for the first time since her world had shattered, Meredith felt whole. Not healed, not yet, but on the path to healing with someone who understood her pain because he carried his own. The snow came the next morning, fat white flakes that fell steadily and transformed the ranch into a wonderland. Meredith woke to the sight of Quentin brushing snow off the porch, his breath fogging in the cold air. When he saw her at the window, he grinned and waved. She dressed quickly and joined him outside, tilting her face up to catch snowflakes on her tongue like she had as a child. Quentin laughed, a sound of pure joy that made her heart soar. "You look about 12 years old right now," he said. "I feel about 12 years old. This is the first snow of the season. That is special." She spun in a circle, arms outstretched, and nearly slipped on the accumulating snow. Quentin caught her elbow, steadying her, and they stood close together, both of them smiling. "I am glad you were here to see it," he said softly. "I am glad you were here for all of it." They worked together that day, shoveling paths and making sure the horses had shelter from the storm. The work was hard but satisfying, and Meredith found herself laughing more than she had since before her parents' death. She and Quentin developed an easy rhythm, anticipating each other's movements, working as a team. That evening, Mrs. Morrison invited them both to supper at the main house rather than with the hands. Over roast chicken and potatoes, the older woman watched them with knowing eyes. "I suppose you two have something to tell me," Agnes said, her tone mild but amused. Quentin and Meredith exchanged glances, and he reached under the table to take her hand. "We have developed feelings for each other, madam. We wanted you to know, since Meredith lives on your property and I work for you." "Developed feelings." What a delicate way to put it. Agnes sipped her wine. "I have eyes, Quentin. I have seen how you look at each other for weeks now. I am glad you have finally admitted it to yourselves. Life is too short for dancing around the truth." "You are not upset?" Meredith asked. "Upset? Child, I am delighted. I told you weeks ago that you needed to stop wasting time on fear. I am glad you listened." Agnes set down her glass. "But I do have one question. What are your intentions, Quentin Foster?" He sat straighter, his hand tightening on Meredith's. "Honorable ones, madam. I know it is early days yet, but I intend to court Meredith properly, and, if she will have me eventually, marry her." Meredith's heart felt too large for her chest. They had confessed their feelings less than 24 hours ago, but hearing him speak of marriage made it real in a way it had not been before. "And you, Meredith?" Agnes asked. "What do you want?" "I want what Quentin wants," she said quietly. "I want a future with him, a life we build together. I know it is fast, but nothing about our situation has been conventional, and I am certain of what I feel. Then you have my blessing and my support. This ranch has always been a place where people can build new lives. I am happy to see two people I care about finding happiness together." Agnes raised her glass in a toast. "To new beginnings and healing hearts." They clinked glasses, and Meredith felt tears of joy slip down her cheeks. So much had been taken from her, but here at Silver Creek Ranch, she was finding it again in new and unexpected ways. Not her parents, never them, but a life worth living, a man worth loving, a future worth fighting for. Winter settled over Colorado, with the determination of a season that knew its power. The ranch work continued, harder now with snow to contend with and ice to break in water troughs. But Meredith thrived in the cold months, finding beauty in the harsh landscape and satisfaction in the daily rhythms of ranch life. Quentin still watched over her at night, but now he often came inside the cottage rather than sitting on the porch. They would sit by the stove, talking quietly, or simply being together in comfortable silence. Sometimes she would fall asleep with her head on his shoulder, and he would carry her to bed and tuck her in before resuming his watch. It was proper enough, with him never staying the night, but intimate in ways that mattered more than physical closeness. In December, Dancer was sold to a rancher from Denver for an excellent price. Mrs. Morrison gave Meredith a bonus from the sale, acknowledging her skill in training him. With the money, Meredith bought fabric in Georgetown and spent her evenings sewing, creating a new wardrobe to replace the few worn things she had arrived with. Christmas came, and the ranch celebrated with a large meal and gifts exchanged among the workers. Quentin gave Meredith the carved hawk he had been working on when they met. Its wings spread in flight, detailed and beautiful. She gave him a shirt she had sewn, dark blue that matched his eyes, and he wore it immediately with obvious pride. On Christmas night, they walked together under stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch. The snow crunched under their boots, and their breath created clouds in the freezing air. "I have something to ask you," Quentin said, stopping under a pine tree heavy with snow. "I know we have only known each other 4 months. I know by conventional standards that is too fast. But Meredith, I have never been more certain of anything in my life." He pulled off his glove and reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small ring. It was simple, a silver band with a single small diamond, nothing fancy or expensive, but clearly chosen with care. "I had to sell my whittling knife to buy this," he said with a self-deprecating smile. "So I am going to have to get a new one, but it seemed worth it." He took her hand, his fingers warm despite the cold. "Meredith Jenkins, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life guarding your sleep and your happiness? Will you build a life with me here at Silver Creek Ranch?" Joy exploded in her chest, so intense it stole her breath. "Yes. Yes, Quentin. Absolutely yes. I cannot imagine my future without you in it." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her for the first time, his lips warm and gentle against hers. The kiss tasted of promise and hope, of healing and new beginnings. When they finally broke apart, they were both grinning like fools. "I love you," Meredith said, the words coming easily now. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes. I love you too, and you never have to be scared again. I have got you." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips again. "We have got each other." They married in February on a day when the winter sun shone brilliantly on snow-covered mountains. The ceremony took place in Georgetown's small church, with Mrs. Morrison and the ranch hands in attendance. Meredith wore a dress she had sewn herself, simple but elegant, and carried wildflowers that Quentin had somehow found blooming in a sheltered spot near the ranch. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Quentin kissed her with such tenderness that Meredith felt tears slip down her cheeks. Happy tears, healing tears, the kind that washed away old pain and made room for new joy. They spent their wedding night in the cottage that had become Meredith's refuge when she first arrived. But now it was their home, a place they would share as husband and wife. Quentin carried her over the threshold, laughing when she protested she was too heavy, insisting she weighed nothing at all. That night, for the first time in 9 months, Meredith slept without any trace of fear or nightmare. She slept wrapped in her husband's arms, safe and loved and wholly at peace. And Quentin slept too, no longer needing to keep watch because they guarded each other now, two wounded souls who had found healing in love. Spring came early to Colorado that year, melting the snow and bringing green shoots pushing through the thawed earth. Meredith and Quentin settled into married life with an ease that felt like coming home. They worked side by side on the ranch, their partnership extending from personal to professional. Mrs. Morrison gave them the cottage permanently, along with a raise in their wages, acknowledging their value to Silver Creek Ranch. In May, Meredith discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with equal parts joy and terror. She wanted this baby desperately, wanted to create a family with Quentin, but the memories of loss still haunted her. What if something happened? What if the Wade gang found her and destroyed this new life she had built? Quentin held her as she cried, let her express her fears without trying to dismiss them. Then he said gently, "We cannot live our lives afraid of what might happen, Meredith. We can only prepare as best we can and trust that we are stronger together than apart. This baby is a gift, a new beginning. Let us embrace it." His words gave her courage. She threw herself into preparing for the baby, sewing tiny clothes and turning one corner of the cottage into a nursery. The other ranch wives, women she had come to know and care for over the winter, rallied around her with advice and hand-me-down baby items. She felt embraced by a community in a way she had not since losing her parents. Summer brought long days of work and swelling heat that made Meredith's pregnancy more uncomfortable, but she loved feeling the baby move inside her, loved the visible proof that life continued, that death and destruction had not won. Quentin was attentive and protective without being overbearing, making sure she rested when she needed to, while respecting her desire to continue working. In August, on a blistering hot afternoon, a rider came to Silver Creek Ranch with news that made Meredith's blood run cold. The Wade gang had been spotted near Georgetown, heading south through the mountains. "They are probably moving toward warmer territory for winter," the rider said, "but folks are nervous. Everyone remembers what they did to the Johnson Ranch last fall." Meredith felt panic rising in her throat. They were here, in her territory, close enough to find her. She stood abruptly from where she had been sitting on the porch, her hands instinctively going to her swollen belly. Quentin was at her side immediately. "Hey, breathe! Just breathe!" "They are here, Quentin. What if they come here? What if they recognize me?" "They will not get anywhere near you. I swear it." He turned to the rider. "Has the sheriff been notified?" He is gathering a posse. They are hoping to catch the gang before they can hit another homestead. After the rider left to spread the word to other ranches, Mrs. Morrison called a meeting of all the hands. The Wade gang is in the area. We are going to increase patrols, keep extra men on watch at night. No one works alone. We protect our own, and that means we protect this ranch and everyone on it. The men nodded their agreement, their faces grim but determined. Meredith felt some of her panic ease. She was not alone this time. She had people who cared about her, who would stand between her and danger. That night, Quentin held her close in their bed, his hand resting on her belly where the baby kicked. "I will not let anything happen to you or our child," he said fiercely. "I swear on my life, Meredith, you are safe here. I know, I trust you." And she did, completely and without reservation. If anyone could protect her, it was this man who had guarded her sleep like treasure from the moment they met. The next 2 days were tense, with everyone on edge waiting for news. Then word came that the sheriff's posse had caught up with the Wade gang in a canyon south of Georgetown. There had been a gunfight. 2 of the Wade brothers were dead, and the third was in custody along with several other gang members. Cutter had been killed trying to escape. When Quentin brought Meredith the news, she sat down hard, her legs suddenly unable to support her. "They are dead? Really dead?" "Really dead. The gang is broken. Some members got away, but without the Wade brothers to lead them, they will likely scatter. The reign of terror is over." Meredith put her face in her hands and wept. She cried for her parents, for all the families the gang had destroyed, for the months of fear she had carried. But underneath the grief was relief so profound it made her shake. It was truly over. She could stop looking over her shoulder. She could raise her child without that shadow hanging over them. Quentin held her through the storm of emotion, his own eyes wet. She knew he was thinking of his father, of his brother's injuries, of his own years spent hunting futilely for justice. The Wade gang had touched both their lives with violence, and now that violence had finally been answered. "We are free," Meredith whispered when she could speak again. "We can truly start fresh now." "We already were," Quentin said gently. "But yes, now we can do it without fear. That is worth everything." Their son was born in November, during the first real snowstorm of the winter. The labor was long and difficult, but when Meredith finally held her baby boy, all the pain was forgotten. He had Quentin's hazel eyes and her dark hair, and he was perfect in every way. They named him Thomas Edward Foster, after both their fathers. Quentin cried when she told him, and she fell in love with him all over again, seeing his tenderness with their son. Those first months of parenthood were exhausting and wonderful. Thomas was a good baby, alert and curious, and he seemed to know he was deeply loved. Quentin proved to be a devoted father, getting up for midnight feedings and changing diapers without complaint. Mrs. Morrison doted on the baby, as did the other ranch families, and Meredith marveled at how much her life had changed in just over a year. She still sometimes dreamed of that terrible night when her world had ended. But now, when she woke in the darkness, she had Quentin beside her and Thomas sleeping in his cradle nearby, and the dreams lost their power. She had built a new life from the ashes of the old, and it was good. As Thomas grew from infant to toddler, Meredith and Quentin discussed their future. They loved Silver Creek Ranch and the community they had found there, but they also dreamed of having their own place someday. Mrs. Morrison, growing older and thinking about her own legacy, made them an offer. "I have been thinking about retiring," she said one spring evening when Thomas was nearly 2. "My daughter wants me to come live with her in town, help with her children. I am tired of the hard work of ranching, if I am honest. I want to spend my remaining years in comfort." "We would miss you terribly, madam," Meredith said, bouncing Thomas on her knee. "I would miss you too, which is why I want to sell you the ranch." Agnes smiled at their shocked expressions. "I have watched you both these past 3 years. You have the skills, the dedication, and the love for this place to make it thrive. I would rather sell to you than to strangers. We can work out terms, payments over time. What do you say?" Meredith looked at Quentin, seeing her own excitement and trepidation mirrored in his face. It was a huge undertaking, a massive responsibility, but it was also a dream come true, a chance to truly put down roots and build something lasting. "We say yes," Quentin said firmly. "If you are sure, Mrs. Morrison, we would be honored to buy Silver Creek Ranch from you." They worked out the details over the following weeks, settling on a price and payment plan that was fair to everyone. Mrs. Morrison moved to Georgetown to live with her daughter, visiting the ranch often to check on its progress. Ann Meredith and Quentin became the owners of the Silver Creek Ranch, a responsibility they took seriously and approached with determination. The years that followed were full of hard work and deep satisfaction. They expanded the horse breeding operation, gaining a reputation throughout Colorado for quality animals and fair dealing. They hired good workers and treated them well, creating the kind of community that Mrs. Morrison had fostered. And they raised their children because Thomas was eventually joined by twin daughters named Sarah and Emma, and then another son they named Daniel. Meredith sometimes thought about the broken girl who had stumbled into Georgetown that September day in 1882, exhausted and terrified, and certain she would never feel safe again. That girl felt like someone from another lifetime, though the memories were still there, softened by time and healing. She had learned that trauma did not simply disappear, but it could be integrated into a life rather than dominating it. She had learned that love was the best medicine for a wounded heart, and that sometimes the worst moments in life led to the best ones. She had learned that family was not just blood, but the people who stood by you when everything fell apart. And she had learned that sleep was indeed a treasure, especially when guarded by someone who loved you enough to watch over you through the darkest nights. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Meredith and Quentin stood on the porch of the ranch house they had expanded and improved over the years. Their children were grown now, Thomas working the ranch alongside his father, the twins married and starting families of their own, Daniel studying law in Denver, but home for visits. "Do you ever think about how we met?" Meredith asked, leaning into Quentin's embrace. He still held her like she was precious, like guarding her was his highest calling. "All the time. I think about how close I came to not being in Georgetown that day, to not seeing you fall in the street. My whole life would be different." "Mine too. You saved me, Quentin. Not just from exhaustion or fear, but from losing myself completely." "We saved each other," he corrected gently. "I was drifting before you came along, just going through the motions. You gave me purpose and joy, and a reason to build something lasting." She turned in his arms to face him, seeing the lines time had carved into his face, the gray threading through his hair. He was as handsome to her now as he had been at 25, maybe more so because she knew every part of him, the shadows and the light. "I love you," she said, words she never tired of speaking. "I loved you when you were a cowboy sitting on my porch whittling hawks. I loved you when you became my husband. I love you now as the father of my children and the owner of this ranch we built together. I will love you until my last breath." "And I will love you beyond that," Quentin said, kissing her softly. "Into whatever comes after, Meredith. You are my heart, my home, my treasure." They stood together watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple, the same mountains that had witnessed their journey from broken strangers to a family unit, to partners in life and business. Silver Creek Ranch spread out before them, prosperous and peaceful, a testament to what could be built from ashes and hope. Meredith thought about sleep, that gift she had been unable to claim when she first arrived. Now she slept peacefully every night, secure in the knowledge that she was loved and safe. Quentin no longer had to guard her sleep like treasure, because they guarded each other in all things, partners in the truest sense. But sometimes, on quiet evenings, she would find him on the porch whittling, keeping watch over their home and family the way he had once kept watch over her. And she would join him there, sitting close, comfortable in the silence that came from years of knowing and loving someone completely. Their love story had begun with trauma and fear, with a woman who could not remember the last time she had slept, and a cowboy who offered to guard that sleep like the treasure it was. But it had grown into something beautiful and lasting, a partnership that weathered storms and celebrated joys, that created life and legacy. And in the end, that was what mattered most. Not the violence that had brought them together, but the love that had kept them together. Not the nightmares that had plagued Meredith's sleep, but the dreams they had built into reality. Not the fear that had once controlled her, but the courage she had found to love and be loved in return. As darkness fell over Silver Creek Ranch, Meredith and Quentin went inside to the home they had made, the family they had raised, the life they had fought for and won. And that night, like every night, they slept peacefully in each other's arms, two souls who had found healing and hope in the Wild West. In the mountains of Colorado, in the simple act of guarding each other's sleep like the treasure it truly was. Their story had a happy ending, the kind that fairy tales promised but real life rarely delivered, but they had earned it through persistence and love, through supporting each other through darkness and celebrating together in light. They had taken broken pieces and made something whole, taken separate paths and woven them into one journey, taken individual dreams and built them into a shared reality. And every morning, when Meredith woke to find Quentin beside her, she gave thanks for the day she had fallen in the street of Georgetown, exhausted and afraid, only to be caught by a cowboy with kind eyes and a generous heart. That moment had changed everything, had given her back her life and her hope, had shown her that even in the darkest times, love could find a way. Their children grew and had children of their own, and Silver Creek Ranch remained in the Foster family for generations. The story of how Meredith and Quentin met became family legend, told and retold to grandchildren and great-grandchildren, a reminder that love could bloom in the most unlikely circumstances and that healing was always possible with patience and care. Meredith lived to be 73, a good long life by frontier standards. Quentin was by her side when she passed peacefully in her sleep one winter night, holding her hand as he had held it through decades of marriage. Her last words to him were simple. "Thank you for guarding my sleep all these years. I could not have done this life without you." And Quentin, tears streaming down his weathered face, whispered back, "It was my privilege and my joy. Sleep well, my treasure. I will be along soon to guard you again." He lived another 2 years, spending his remaining time surrounded by family, telling stories of the Wild West and the remarkable woman who had changed his life. When he died, his children buried him next to Meredith on a hill overlooking Silver Creek Ranch with a simple headstone that read, "Quentin Foster, beloved husband and father. He guarded her sleep like treasure, and she filled his life with joy." And if love persists beyond death, then perhaps Meredith and Quentin found each other again in whatever comes after, to continue the partnership they had forged in life. Perhaps they still guard each other's rest, still build dreams together, still love with the fierce devotion that had seen them through tragedy and triumph. Their story was one of healing and hope, of finding love in unexpected places, of building a life worth living from the ruins of what was lost. It was a Wild West romance in the truest sense, set against the backdrop of Colorado mountains and frontier towns, of cattle drives and horse training, of hard work and honest living. But most of all, it was a story about sleep, that fundamental human need, and how the simple act of guarding someone's rest can become an act of love so profound it transforms 2 lives. It was about a woman who could not remember the last time she had slept, and the cowboy who guarded her sleep like treasure, and the beautiful life they built together from that foundation of care and devotion. And that, in the end, was the greatest treasure of all.